Welcome, everybody. Thanks for driving in for our September commission meeting. We'll go ahead and go around the room and just introduce yourself as part of establishing quorum if you're on the commission. So I'm John Schneider. I'm the Director of Youth and Family in El Reno, serving on behalf of the Oklahoma Association of Youth Services.
Hello, I'm Kaylee Kurth. I'm from Weatherford. I represent the PAR board as a previous foster parent. Now I'm an at-large member.
I'm Jonathan Hall, president of Warburton Capital, and I'm the governor's appointee representing business and industry.
Jeffrey Cartmel, executive director of the Office of Juvenile Affairs for a few more days.
Jacqueline Aaron, I'm the executive director for CASA Western Oklahoma, representing CASA.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Laird. I work for the Oklahoma City Community Foundation. I am an appointee of Senate Pro Tem Greg Treat as an individual with an expressed interest in improving child serving systems that is not employed by a state agency.
I'm Ellen Bittner, I'm the director of the Oklahoma Health Care Authority.
I'm Mike Warren, and I'm a judge of the district court representing the Supreme Court.
Awesome. We have quorum? Yes, okay. Thank you so much. I think we also usually go over a few just administrative rules for the meeting, and can you help us with that, please? Oh, we've got a couple online. I'm sorry, I missed our commissioners on Zoom.
I'll go ahead. I'm Brad Wilson. I'm from Ardmore. I am the member on the commission representing the Oklahoma Bar Association.
Hi, I'm Jenna Harrington. I'm the CEO at Marlin's Place, a foster care agency in Ponca City, and I represent residential and child placing agencies.
Commissioner Hicks, we can't hear you. We've got some technical issues, but Commissioner Hicks is with us, so he needs to be recorded into the minutes, please, for attendance. Okay, do we have any other commissioners online? No. All right, can you help us with some of our administrative rules, please?
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the Commission on Children and Youth Commissioners meeting this morning. We would like to ask all attendees to keep your cameras turned off and your microphones muted unless you are a commissioner. I have one attendee, Katie's iPhone, down at the bottom of the screen. Katie, could you please type in your last name so we can record your attendance at the meeting this morning? If you are a member of the media and you would like to make an inquiry, our public information officer's information is in the chat for you to contact him through. There will be no public comments during this meeting unless you have signed up previously. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Okay, then we will move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. We do have 2 people signed up for public comment this morning. I do appreciate both of you taking the time to come and speak and share whatever it is you want to share. So thank you for doing that. And we have 3 minutes per person for public comment. And first on the list is Rachel Proper. So where's yours?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Proper. I'm a private child care provider here in Oklahoma County, a member of the Oklahoma Child Care Association. Speaking today regarding item number 5 on today's agenda, which is the proposed subsidy eligibility for child care. As a child care provider who provides services to families using the subsidy eligibility system, we in the industry would ask both the agency and those involved to reconsider the potential impact of this potential change. I know, having lived it, we had a delay in an increase in the subsidy eligibility system from 2007 to 2014, and that delay decimated our industry. We lost about 40% of our available childcare during that time period. And not to mention, this proposal would reduce families' eligibility who are currently on the system. And those are working families who are currently getting childcare who would no longer be eligible, and potentially losing those individuals from the workforce, which I think is a huge workforce development issue. The other thing that we would like to mention is that the proposed rules document two potential alternatives. One, which would be a wait list for childcare subsidy for new entrants, and also the possibility for an enrollment freeze to the childcare subsidy system. That is something that Oklahoma had to do, also having had to have lived that back in 2016. At the time, then Director of DHS, Director Lake, proposed a 6-month freeze on new enrollments for childcare. And after doing that process, they were able to remove that freeze after 2 months into that, with the system and the budget shortfall having righted itself in a smaller amount of time than originally anticipated. So we know that DHS is in a difficult position, and money is always a challenge, but we just want to make sure that there's conversations being had and that people are aware of all the different levers that we could potentially pull to hopefully fix this situation, and knowing that there's been examples of all of these scenarios, with the exception of a wait list, that we can pull information from to see what's the best option for Oklahoma. And I would just like to mention that today. Thank you.
Okay, next on the list, we have Angie Clayton.
Yes. My name's Angie Clayton. I own 2 childcare centers, one in Tecumseh, called Kids Rest of Tecumseh, and one in Moore. It's called Broadway Kids of Moore. My family owns one on north side of Oklahoma City, also one in Choctaw. We also own one in Seminole, and my mom just lost hers last year in the tornado in Shawnee. So we have the east all covered. I am also with Rachel talking about the reduction of the eligibility scale. The parents are not aware of it. They'll be going from 85% of state median income, that's who qualifies now, down to 70%. As we know that all wages have risen and everyone doesn't make $7.25 anymore, $10, $15 an hour barely makes it its poverty level. And so we are just very concerned about we are 80%, almost 90% DHS. That's both my centers and my parent centers are. We take care of the children. We were open during COVID. We have done everything we thought was right, and we understand budget constraints and some of these other avenues that she was talking about, the freeze, we think would be more in favor of, or maybe a wait list, if that would be even an opportunity to try to help us during these times. So again, my name is Angie Clayton, and I also am on the Oklahoma Childcare Association. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we don't have anybody else signed up for public comment. I will move on to agenda item number 3. Review of the minutes from the June 21st, 2024 commission meeting.
Move that they be approved as written.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
CEO Bittner?
Yes.
Director Hartmell?
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Laird?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Agenda item number 4, presentation from the Parent Partnership Board, and I will introduce Mr. James Ray and turn it over to him for presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Howdy and hello. I'm just gonna lean on this. So my name is James Ray. I have lived experience with addiction, DHS, and jail time, a number of things. But now currently I am a member of the OCCY Parent Partnership Board, and they asked me to come here today to share a little bit of my story and just kind of the impact that this career path has led me on and how the OCCY has kind of come about from that. Anyway, so I have been in the drug scene and battling with addiction since I was probably about 11 years old. All the way up until my teen years, all the way up until I was 22, in which case life threw a brick at me, and while I was in an apartment doing what I do, my girlfriend at the time comes in and tells me she's pregnant. I don't know if you've ever had that wave kind of come over you like that. But you know, all the choices I was making, everything that was going on in my life, I just realized was, excuse my language, not appropriate. I remember sitting there thinking, just I have to get a job, I have to get a house, I have to get sober, I have to do all of this. And I had all the motivation in the world to do it. You know, that lasted about 2 months before I was back to hitting the needle, hitting the pipe. And my girlfriend was getting high along with me all throughout the pregnancy. And luckily enough, our baby girl was born and there was nothing wrong with her. You know, at least literally nothing. She was fine. And so I thought you know, it was a miracle, dodged a bullet and all of that, but it wasn't enough to change my ways. I still, you know, every time I was getting high, having people over, I convinced myself that even though, you know, I had a roof over my daughter's head, I had an apartment, you know, whether I had to steal the food, steal the toys, buy them, whatever, I was providing for her. All at the same token, I was getting high in the bathroom every time she fell asleep. I was, you know, in the living room, tying one off and, you know, just all around not really being there. I was caring more about my addiction than raising her. And then that's when I get a knock on my door from DHS. She was, I want to say, a little over 1. And they informed me that they had already taken custody of my daughter, that I need to go and talk to the caseworker and all these things that just felt like a whirlwind. Next thing I know, I'm being told I can't see my baby girl for only an hour a week. They threw a packet at me, said, we know you're using, we know you're a junkie. You have been neglecting your daughter, all these negative things, and said, you got to get sober or you're going to lose her. And hand me this packet. I ran headfirst in the other direction. That was the darkest time of my life. I felt like I lost everything. My baby girl was the only thing I cared about, and I had no supports, I had no family. You know, I burned those bridges. And I just remember staring at this packet like, there's Catalyst, SOS, all this, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I called them, try to get set up, but I'm using throughout the whole time. Cut to about 6 months in, I have my, I want to say 3rd caseworker, and he sits me down and tells me, he's just real with me. He tells me, if I don't do what I have to do, if I don't get sober, if I don't attend these classes and finish this program, things are going to get worse. And I kind of scoffed at him and I was like, how could things get worse? Took my daughter, you're telling me to get sober. Nobody's listening to me, like I have nothing. I'm living out of my car at this point. He says, well, if you don't do this, you'll never get to see her. You won't have any contact. She'll be raised by another family. You'll have nothing to do with her. She will truly be gone. And so I decided that was worse. And so right then and there, just kind of decided to give it an actual shot. I started attending the programs. I worked my ass off, staying sober in places where I shouldn't be staying. And it paid off, you know. It took longer than it should have, but I after about 1.5 years, I was fortunate enough to reunify with my baby girl. Reunified with her, and then, you know, with nothing holding over my head, about 6 months later, I thought I could do it again. Decided to go back. And it got bad real quick. I overdosed 3 times. I could see exactly where it was heading. And so I decided the last thing I wanted was DHS to be involved in my life again. So I signed over guardianship. And the judge basically told me the same thing DHS would have told me. You know, if you want to see your daughter, if you want to be in her life, if you want to have any rights to visitation, you gotta get your ducks in a row. And so I did just that. And I remember, I'll never forget it, February 19th of 2019 was the last time I ever shot up heroin. Because I remember saying, like, I've got to find a way out of this. I don't want to be one of those 50-year-old addicts living out of a shack. Kids don't talk to, cares nothing for his life. All he's chasing is the next hit or bottle or anything like that. Like, I've seen enough of what that does and families it destroys, and I didn't want that. So I got sober and I've been clean and sober ever since then. So that's my background. Which after, I think it was in 2020, I was looking for jobs and I noticed that there was a position called Parent Partners with North Care. And one of their qualifications was you had to have DHS experience. And I was like, out of all the experience I got, that is something I do have. So I went in, I got the job, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I got to work alongside caseworkers, not for them, which is a clear distinction I had to make with the parents I worked with. But anyway, I got to see the ins and outs and the other sides of the child welfare thing, and it kind of opened up my eyes. It made me start to realize, like, as much hate as I was harboring against DHS, even pre and during my addiction, because all I heard was these negative things, like if DHS comes, they're gonna take kids. DHS comes, they're gonna ruin your life. Like they're just in it to get the babies they sell. But working alongside that, I started to see the other side of things and how critical this necessary evil is, so to speak, and how these caseworkers really do, got good ones who devote everything to the point of burnout where they can't go on, but they're trying to do everything for the kid and for the parent. And then, you have other undesirables that don't necessarily do the same thing, if I'm going to be completely honest, but it's people trying to do their best. And that made me kind of realize again, then at that moment, life hit me with another brick. Maybe the system isn't all that bad. Maybe there's a point to it. There's a lot of things wrong with it. I know there's a lot of you here today that work within the system. It can't be denied, I'm sorry. But it's a good system. But there's a voice missing. And I delved deeper into it. And that's why I loved Parent Partners, because it added that advocacy part, that voice, that lifting up the people who have been here, been through it, and can see what's wrong and what works, bringing that to the courts to advocate on their behalf. And then it led me down to OCCY, where I met them at they were just handing out pamphlets at one of these trainings we were going, and I read it and I was like, you know what, that sounds like fun. I figure I could give it a shot. And I come in here and I hear them talking, I get accepted, and now it's opened again my eyes to this bigger world where these issues that I've been seeing problems with all across the board are all interconnected. And how people, it's not just me who's seeing an issue, but people with the ability to enact change or rising up to go to legislators to bring about policy change, all in the effort to further strengthen Oklahoma families. And the more I got into it, the more I was like, yeah, that's what I'm about. Let's do it. And it's become very apparent to me that one of the biggest things that OCCY stands for, and one of the things I'm very passionate about, is getting this lived experience into the professional field, is getting people who have been through it, who can tell you, this is what worked, this wasn't working, but this is how I got through it, to the people that have the capability to make change. That is the missing piece of this puzzle. I've talked to supervisors, I've talked to other important people within DHS or foster care families and all that, and they keep saying, like, what are we missing? Like, we want this to happen. I'm like, you're thinking at it in a different point of view. You need to bring somebody who's going through it to the table. You need to have them not just as a consultation, but have someone working with you that could step in at any time and say, hey, I've been here, this hurt. Or, hey, yeah, this is something that somebody did for me, and I think we can take that avenue and build upon it and make it better. Because I'm seeing all around the possibility for change. I'm seeing how this could impact people who come out of addiction who may not have a good, solid wraparound program or aftercare like I did that lead them down the wrong road. If I could have found Parent Partners or OCCY earlier, I honestly believe that would have stopped me. I wouldn't have been bored. I wouldn't have felt the wild itch to go back into that lifestyle, because this takes up all of my time. But I'm kind of getting off the subject. Anyway, I'm glad I can be here to address this, to share my story. And I want you all to know, my story is not the only one. There are hundreds, thousands of parents out there with similar stories, have great ideas and can be impactful, but they need a seat at the table. They need someone to listen. And I think with that would be enough momentum to change the system for that.
James, thank you so much for sharing your story and the courage it takes to do that and walk through all that. I just really appreciate you doing that and also the work in this space, you know, to shed light on how critical it is that we listen to all people and all things, you know, from all directions and people with lived experience. And I just really appreciate it. That was very moving.
As long as you let me talk and
You did a fantastic job.
All right.
Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 5, presentation on the proposed emergency rules for the Oklahoma Administrative Code for Oklahoma Human Services, and I will turn it over to their Deputy Director, Deborah Smith.
Good morning. Morning. I do have a PowerPoint. I sent a slide deck to someone this morning. I'm sorry, I forgot her name. She sent me an email and asked me if I had a slide deck.
Sure.
I'm not saying it.
We'll get it up. Do we have it?
You might have it, I just don't have it up right now. Yeah, but I didn't see number 5. And make sure I had it up.
I'll start really quick with an introduction of who I am. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Deborah Smith. I'm Deputy Director at Oklahoma Human Services, and I have been before the commission before in a couple of other roles. I've spent a couple of decades in child welfare, last 3 years in adult and family services, which is our safety net program, safety net services. And then most recently, I came to you as chair of Children's State Advisory Work Group, where I work with OCCY and Danielle Dill and your cross systems coordinator in pulling those state agencies together. So you may remember I brought a gentleman with me who was the new cross systems coordinator, and we were introducing that program to you. So good to be back in front of you. Today I'm in front of you though for related to childcare, which is a new space for me. I've been, there it is. That looks familiar. Thank you. I was asked to come about 5 months ago, asked to come and help the DHS leadership team with some childcare challenges. So I am not a childcare expert. I'm learning quickly, but I'm actually not an expert. So if I can't answer some of the questions today, I will certainly research those and get back to you. But I have spent 5 months in a deep dive, so hopefully I can answer most of them. So Oklahoma, we have some important decisions to make regarding the child care program in our state. New federal rules are to be implemented by fall of 2026. And these new rules come to states with no additional federal funds. So the largest shifts are in policy related to enrollment versus attendance and paying providers in advance. There's some other ones, but those are the 2 big ones. But today though, I'm here to talk about proposed emergency rules. And this is one strategy that will help OKDHS align the current child care budget and resolve some of the challenges that we've had with implementation of the revised quality rating system. So I just
Scroll situation.
Did that work? Nope. I can't see around to see where. Do you mind forwarding? There's only 5 or 6 slides and then I'm just
I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, so what is Oklahoma Human Services role in the child care space? I thought I would start there just to make sure we had a common understanding. Child care subsidy is available through the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant. It helps parents who meet income requirements pay for licensed childcare while they're at work or in training or in education. And the payments are paid directly to the provider on behalf of the parent. And families may have co-payments depending on their income. But I did want to point out childcare providers, and I'm sorry I missed your comments this morning. I wish I would have heard those. So maybe you can repeat those for me on a different break. So our private business owners, so they can choose whether or not to accept subsidy payment based on their own business plans. The second area we're responsible for is childcare licensing, which is really that licensing act was enacted in 1963. As part of our responsibility, we work with childcare providers and other industry experts on licensing requirements. So related to minimum health and safety requirements, which is really the foundation of quality care, are those basic safety and licensing requirements to ensure children are safe, healthy. Next slide. So this one I really wanted to cover the goals, just overall goal, but mainly the cost drivers of our budget. Our mission is to assure Oklahoma families have access to licensed, affordable, quality childcare. And we work at course, families, children, employers, the childcare workforce all depend on quality childcare to really support communities across Oklahoma. So we know how important it is for us to have a really strong childcare program in Oklahoma. On the right, you'll see some of the cost drivers. We're serving more children. We have more licensed facilities participating in the subsidy program than we've ever had before. And the agency is paying higher reimbursement rates, higher than any other time in our history. And we also have more providers at higher rates or higher levels in the STAR system. But let's start with the increase of children first. Since July 1 of 2022, there has been a 20% increase of children in the child care subsidy program. We went from about 36,000 to 43,000, so 7,000 children increase in that subsidy program, which is the largest increase we've seen in a while. And then the second one, we've seen the largest percentage of providers and subsidy children at the highest STAR levels since our launch of our revised quality rating system that launched in January 2023. The third driver is really the post-pandemic funding. We were fortunate that the federal government, to all states across the nation, the federal government really stepped in and provided funds to keep the industry going during COVID. Really hard, that may have been some of your comments, were to stay afloat during the pandemic with low attendance and all the challenges that came with pandemic funding. So since 2020, we have Oklahoma has spent $1.4 billion on the child care industry since 2020, more than almost about $968 million in child care subsidy payments, $383 million in child care stabilization payments, really to keep that industry going, and then about $44 million in child care desert grants. Those funds have been exhausted. They were exhausted in May of this year. We had until September 30th to spend them, but we spent them at a faster pace than we had planned. So during this, since May, when the funds were exhausted, we have continued to keep some of those incentives in place. But the last ones are kind of rolling off. Some last month, some this month. So we find ourselves in a situation where we need to realign that budget. So the next slide, I'll share some budget strategies that we're working on. So the first thing we did for FY25 was really to set a sustainable annual budget for the subsidy program. We set that budget at $207 million. Expenditures would have been $321 million at the current pace and with those existing strategies that were part of the pandemic strategies. We also have some proposed emergency rules that I'm here to talk with you about today. They involve a reduction in income eligibility rules for families from 85 to 70% of the state median income. This would impact just over 900 children and will reduce annual expenses by about $7 million. If those are approved, they would, the implementation date would be January 2025. In the middle column, our QRS implementation. I need a drink. Talking too fast and not. I'll start now. This podium's a little tall for me too. So QRS implementation. We revised the QRS system and relaunched that system in January 2023. We moved from a 3-star system to a 5-star system. And this is something that the industry and OKDHS have been working on for years to revise that. So beginning in about 2022, the rules were changed in 2022 and providers could make attestation to what their new STAR level should be. And that launched, we started doing that in late 2022, and then it was effective January 2023. So we saw a huge shift in the providers and the levels that they were at. The 3-star system, we had a bell curve, had a lot of providers in the middle. We had some in the lower star, some in the higher star. But with the new system, we saw a huge shift, and most providers were in the highest levels, 4s and 5 stars, mostly 5 stars. So there was some criticism of that implementation of that system, and we certainly wanted to check and make sure that we had implemented that well. So we revisited all programs at the above a 1-star beginning in May through August. We went back out and revisited those programs to make sure that they really were at the star that we believe them to be at and they believe them to be at themselves to be at. So we made quick work of that. And what we found initially was about half of the programs did not have all of their documentation uploaded and in the system. So we gave them a very short amount of time to get that information in. The good news is most of them are at the star that they thought they were and that we thought they were. There were about 10% that were not at that star level. So they either voluntarily reduced or are going through the reduction process. There's an administrative process for that. So that was the good news. They really were at the star that we thought they were at. We didn't know that in the spring. So we went back out and checked. So unwinding pandemic funds, I talked a little bit about that. The child care desert and stabilization incentives close out in spring of 2024. That'll be an additional $60 million in incentives and savings that will end September 30th. And we're covering that currently with TANF. I mentioned funds were exhausted in May, so we've been covering that with our TANF funds, which is allowable up to a certain percent. And we did notify providers and families. Now on the far right, we're working on provider rates. That's something that we're required to do every 3 years. So we did a market rate survey, received those results August 31st. The rate recommendations are significantly higher than what we're paying today. That was a surprise to us because we're paying more than we ever have. So it asks for an additional $10 to $12 per day. So we're doing an additional analysis, really taking into consideration Oklahoma's standard of living and what the rates are around us to make some final decisions. Okay, so that was the why. I felt like I needed to tell you the why we had proposed emergency rules before I got into the actual proposed emergency rules. So here are the timeline for the proposed emergency rules. On the left, far left, are the child care subsidy rules. Those were posted August 22nd. We've received public comments and those have closed. But if approved, those would be in effect January 1. The child care licensing rules were posted on September 11th. The comments are due 9/21. So if approved, kind of depend on the governor how the rules made it through the process. And we have scheduled a public hearing. We're not required to for emergency rules. We feel like with this particular topic, we need to be as transparent as possible and hear as many comments as possible from those who will be impacted. Next steps. So we are we had a couple of resignations, as you all know. Dr. Shropshire resigned from the agency, and also our child care services director, Brittany Lee, resigned from the agency as well. So we need a new child care services director and to continue building a strong team that can really support these changes and prepare for new federal requirements and really make sure we're really focusing on strengthening families and supporting providers. We need to finalize that survey or finalize the survey and set new rates. And we need to create additional communication strategies. We have communicated, but it's never enough. We need more ways that we're getting the message out about changes. So we're working on that as well. I did bring a handout for you for the proposed emergency rules. I only brought 20, but I thought this would be easier than doing a slide deck with, it's probably 150 pages of rules. I knew you didn't want me to read those pages to you. So I condensed those down to just hand out just a front and back. And I'll let that get around before I start. So for the child care subsidy program, we have some revisions in there to define the need factor for child care benefits. Adding a requirement for a 20-hour per week employment requirement. There's no there's currently no weekly hourly requirement. And this really aligns with the foster family's employment requirement to receive child care subsidy. So we're aligning it with that requirement. And we're adding 6 credit hour formal education requirement. There's currently no credit hour requirement when it comes to education. So we're adding a 6-hour credit requirement for parents. And that also aligns with foster families. And we're adding a minimum wage requirement for self-employed individuals. So that if they are self-employed, they're calculated as a minimum wage as opposed to just a 0 income. And this is the big one, the general provisions regarding income. So income eligibility is calculated compared to the state median income. And currently, you have to be below 85% of the state median income. So we're suggesting to reduce that to 70%. This would be an entry eligibility rate. The exit eligibility rate would still be 85. So as a parent comes onto the program or a child comes into the program, their parents would stay on the program until they reach the 85. So it's a little bit of trying to reduce that benefit cliff a little bit. There are a couple of case changes requirements here. These are really tied to getting into compliance with the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act. The 12-month eligibility, we were not in compliance with that. Once someone's determined eligible, they have a 12-month eligibility period unless they go over income. And we were determining eligibility faster than that. So we need to extend it to the full 12 months. And then the other requirement here is when a child is added to a child care case, that new child gets a full 12 months eligibility. The other requirement under subsidy that is proposed to change is requiring child care centers to be at least a 3-star facility to have a child care contract with us for subsidy. Should I pause and take questions on subsidy or just keep rolling with the licensing? Mark?
Question.
Yeah.
So what dollar amount would that be, 70%?
70 to 85%, the dollar amount for the parent or the dollar amount that would save us in.
So it says 70% of the state median income, what is that?
I have it here in my packet, but I don't know if I can rattle it off the top of my head. I will get you the charts. There's a whole chart that shows the state median income. It's not one number, it's based on family size. So I can get you the charts of what it currently is and then what the proposal would be, but I can't rattle off like multiple things to consider in that.
Can you, off the top of your head, tell us the amount that per child that is being divvied out on average?
Per child for subsidy, about $9,000. It can go as high as $14,000 for an infant in a 5-star facility, but the average is about $9,000.
Is that $9,000 per what period of time?
Per year.
Per year.
Right. So an infant in a 5-star center closer to $14,000, all the way down to maybe a lower star facility in an older child. That's kind of where it starts decreasing based on star and age of the child. Certainly more expensive to care for an infant or a toddler than it is a school-age child. The average is about $9,000.
Other questions before she moves on?
How firm are you on the 6 credit hour formal education requirement? I deal with some parents that can barely read, much less get additional education. Now I can see where if you want to qualify as a foster parent, where this is a measurement on the stick. But as far as the parents go, I think you're going to be excluding parents by having this requirement in there.
We're open to we're open to other numbers. Is it a 3 credit hour? What would you, as far as formal education, would you have a thought about what that would be or should be?
I would like to see some of the parents that I deal with be able to read better. And so you're talking about a formal education requirement. Some of them aren't going to be able to achieve that with their best efforts.
So maybe you're thinking of a parent who's maybe in a work program and they're going to maybe a basic English course or a basic math course. And you would want us to consider all the kind of basic stuff that leads up to that, if they're in some kind of program that's trying to help them get to a job level. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I can think of one person in particular that has a brain injury and will probably never be able to read. And so whatever you do to encourage that to happen is not going to be enough to help this individual, and that individual is going to lose the subsidy according to this emergency law. I don't like that.
Is that particular client also employed or not able to be employed?
The client is a handyman. He's self-employed. He can hold a job for a period of time. He seems to have trouble doing that.
He may be eligible also under the self-employment, being allowed to, I mean, he may meet that requirement as well, but I see what you're saying. There could be instances where we need to put some exceptions in there for that situation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So by lowering eligibility from 85% to 70%, do we have an estimate of how many families that will impact, how many children and families?
Yeah, good question. So it's hard to know, looking ahead to who will be applying in January 25 and what their income will be. So our best estimate or best way of calculating that was to look at the current population. So looking at the current population, if they were applying today, 936 children would not be eligible under this rule.
Another quick question, have there been any study done or thought put into, I'm sure there has been, on the impact to the workforce and how many jobs might be impacted or people unable to do their jobs as a result of this change?
So it's a good question. As far as the calculations, I don't remember the exact amounts, which was the first question, but I do remember the difference was about $600 a month as far as income. So if I'm making this amount today and I'm eligible, if when I apply in January, I'll need to make $600 less than I'm making today. I don't know if I'm saying that quite right or if that makes sense. So the impact on that population, it's hard to see exactly what the impact would be. Would they be able to keep their job, not be able to keep their job? Sure. But as far as parents, if you're talking about 936 children, it's, a 2-parent or 1-parent household, you might kind of average that out, and it would probably be 1,000 parents, 1,200 parents. It's hard to calculate exactly. If you calculate everyone has 1.5 children, sure. So that assuming you don't know exactly 2-parent or 1-parent, so I can't answer it really definitively, but that's kind of my best answer I can offer today.
You know roughly what the cost is per child per month that is in custody or removed for neglect?
I'm sorry?
You know what the cost is per child per month of a child that goes into state custody for neglect?
Good question. So I left the child welfare system in 2014. So I don't have a current number. I'm sure it's gone up. I remember the amount being in the $20,000 range, but I don't know what the amount is today. We can get that.
20,000 per month?
I'm sorry, that was an annual amount.
Okay, annually, okay.
I do have a question, or maybe just a thought. And not that I'm skipping over the first part, but when we get to the 3-star, so contracting only with 3-star, so your subsidy also applies to foster and adoptive families. So we've fostered for 7 years. We live in rural Western Oklahoma. Most of your home daycares and a lot of your centers don't have a higher star rating for whatever reason. As a foster parent, you can't take placement if you don't have childcare. So I have a huge concern with the contracting only at a 3-star for what that's going to look like for our foster care system and stabilizing those placements, people being able to take placements at all. There's already desert subsidy areas, so maybe not on paper it's a desert. There's open private pay spots, but not subsidy spots, especially for infants and toddlers. I don't know what that looks like, but that is a scary place to be in that system. And the removal alluding to what John said, the cost of a child being removed from their home due to neglect is much, much higher than if we pay for that child to have daycare while that parent recovers or at risk. We want that kiddo to have 3 meals a day and be in a lit facility and have education. And I feel like with moving that 70 to 85%, we're taking our most at-risk families and saying, sorry, we don't have a place for you here. And your kid's gonna be with someone that maybe is not appropriate or be at home by themselves.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. One of the things that we looked at was, would it be better to do a pause or a wait list? And that makes us nervous as well. So going with the reducing from 85 to 70, at least we're serving the lowest income families. And maybe the families, like at the lowest income that's kind of how we decided that was a pause and a wait list causes you to make everyone wait, even the most vulnerable families who are trying to get to work or trying to get to school. So it was, that's kind of why we went that direction in our recommendation, but definitely hear your concerns. I remember driving around as the child welfare director with a child in my car because the foster parent couldn't find childcare. So I've experienced that firsthand for sure.
Any other questions or
We
comments?
didn't drive around all day, by the way. I was in the house and I just want to make sure I add that on.
I do have one other question. So you'd mentioned on the income change, it's the $600 less. But if that family loses subsidy, their childcare bill is going to be much higher than $600 a month. That's maybe one child. I don't know what the average is on children, but they usually have more than one. So they make $600 more, but their childcare bill is going to be $1,200 to $1,400. They're either going to not work. That's their only option at that point. They can't afford the child.
His question about how many parents are coming out of the workforce because of the change. Are there no other questions? I'll roll through the QRIS.
I just had a question online. Sorry. Are you gonna share your slideshow or that strategic focus? Is that something you can share?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything confidential in that. So certainly happy to share that.
Thank you.
So any other questions online? Okay, and I just want to pause right here and just acknowledge there are no easy decisions here. So, I stand here today to present what our strategies are, but I do have the experience in child welfare and in the safety net services program and have worked enough in rural Oklahoma and metro Oklahoma too to see the impact. So I don't stand here today and say these are easy decisions. I do stand here today to say my role or the expectation is that we align our budget with our expenditures with our allocated budget. So these are the strategies we're putting forth as the best ones we can come up with and when there's tough decisions to be made. And so that is, I just want to say that. I realize these are not easy decisions. So I don't stand here today saying these are easy choices to make. So that's why we're doing public comment, of course, and even an extra hearing with public comments to make sure that we're considering all the different perspectives so that if any revisions are needed, that we can get those incorporated quickly into the strategy. So I just want to say that. I realize it's not easy. So going into QRIS, certification of programs to receive QRIS levels. So just we're reducing the licensing compliance history review from 24 months to 12 months. So that is an important change when we're looking at rating different programs. We have one section in there to have designated childcare staff to monitor the QRIS criteria. And we have some new mandatory initial or higher level certification process. So programs are initially will be approved at a 2 or 3, and then 2 stars can apply for a 3-star at any time. But then for other programs to move up from 3-star to 4-star to 5-star, there'll be a time period where they stay at that level and perform at that level for a period of time before moving forward. We are going to do an on-site pre-certification visit, which we didn't do in January of 2023. So we are going to do a pre-certification visit prior to assigning a star rating. And then flip the page over, reductions. So when star levels are reduced due to basically non-compliance with licensing requirements, this kind of outlines the that a 2-star program would be reduced to 1 star, 3 and 5 programs reduced to 2-star. And that's related to those minimum safety licensing requirements, that kind of how they would be stepped down. And we added administrative review, some clarification there. When you're reducing a 5-star, there is an administrative review process, but we added some clarification into that rule to make sure that it's clear. Some changes of ownership implications, the number of QRIS visits, and clarification on that you have to be meeting those minimum licensing requirements to be approved for a 2-star or higher. I mentioned that. And we're also adding, there was a lot of debate, it sounds like, in the industry and even at DHS when we were working on the revised QRIS system. I wasn't around, but I've heard all about the debate about accreditation. There are different opinions about should someone be accredited or not. And so we want to, at the 4 and 5-star level, have either the requirement for national accreditation or a pathway that involves the environmental rating scales. And what that does is allows you to observe if the quality is actually the quality that maybe is outlined that program has. And the environmental rating scale is used in, I think, about 22 other states, and it involves more observation than just maybe review of the file. Someone's actually spending time there looking at quality so that we know, if a program is at a 4 and 5, we actually observe the quality in that program. Will be 2 different pathways. And then some changes to grievance policies to just make it a little faster, hopefully. And some slight changes to the Child Care Advisory Committee, just membership while we're in there. Questions on the second section? Did I keep that under 15 minutes, Mark? Probably not.
John, can I make a comment? Sure. So first of all, Deb, I appreciate you coming this morning. I know
Good morning, new boss.
Yeah, we're quick to know each other. Really, it's more of a comment, a couple comments. One, I appreciate the work that you've done in the last 5 months trying to, like you said, understand this industry that 5 months ago you weren't super familiar with. And now I'm 5 days into trying to understand this industry that, other than hoping that they're open when I need to drop my kids off, I'm not overly familiar with. But I think my comment to my fellow commissioners is we need your input on these rules. You all represent a variety of stakeholders and interests from across the state. And I want to make sure that as we go forward with these and everything else, that I think this body can and should be a very strong and powerful voice when it comes to children's issues. So please, as you read the rules, as you look through this, don't hesitate to reach out to me. To our friends that are back there, I appreciate you all coming, and I appreciate that you're coming with suggestions and ideas and not just frustration at the agency. And I know that I think the public comment period on one of them is closed. Please continue to send comments if you have them. And if we need to extend or push back the public forum at the end of the month, we will. So I want to make sure that we're going to make a decision that is going to make some people unhappy, and it's going to have a negative impact on families and providers. But I want to make that decision as informed as we possibly can. And the only way we're going to get that, again, is with the feedback from this body, as well as our community partners out in the field actually doing the work every day. So we appreciate you.
Can I make one small comment? I have a unique seat on the commission where I represent business and industry. And so sometimes,
That's a good question.
and sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not. So I can't sit here and say that I even have a better idea or know exactly how to solve the problem. In my day job, I work in personal finance, and my concern presented without a solution is that if someone were to look at that, it'd be easier for me to go to my boss and get my income lowered by $600 a month or whatever it is, than it is to go pay $1,200 for childcare to replace it. And philosophically, that's a concern that I have as you're weighing the different options. Obviously, there's a problem and it has to be addressed. But I don't know, I'm always looking for opportunities to kind of share that experience a little bit, and just wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's a great perspective. I actually had the opportunity to go with the Lieutenant Governor on his tours around the state, where he was talking with business owners and providers in all different communities about workforce challenges. And about half of those, childcare came up as a challenge, at the local level. So it did give a really interesting perspective to hear directly from the businesses. Again, trying to figure out what the right options are is challenging. So thank you.
Who wrote the proposed changes on the emergency law?
So we have child care program staff that are experts in their different areas. So they write them, edit them, actually take pen to paper, and then it's reviewed through our legal counsel and our policy division to get it to the state that it's in at this moment.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have one other comment, and I think it needs to be reconsidered and perhaps rewritten, because I think it's gonna hurt a lot of people as written.
All right, well, thank you so much for your presentation and for coming. I know that's not always a fun discussion.
Someone wants to be a child care services director, we're hiring too. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move around on the agenda just a little bit. I'm gonna move down to agenda item number 8, presentation and possible approval of the finance report. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Abu Balhak. While he's getting set up, I've just realized I failed to mention at the beginning of the meeting that Director Jacoby's out sick today. So that's why, Mark, thank you for filling in, sitting here next to me and helping with the meeting. And I do believe she's online, but that's why she's not in the seat next to me.
Good morning. My name is Abu Balhak and I'm business manager at OCCY. Along with me, I would like to introduce my colleagues from OMES who are here today. Christy Tubbs, Interim Financial Services Manager, Sarah Wen, Financial Manager, and also Holly Williams, who are our agency CPO. They handle all our budget, purchasing, and financial transactions at OMES. And they are doing a great job. We welcome them and thank them for their great work and great support. Now I would like to take an opportunity to present the finance report as of August 31st, 2024. This is a brief presentation and will only take a couple of minutes because it's a short it has short disbursement of just 2 months. So here are some highlights. Our total budget allocations for the financial year 2025 is $5 million. And our utilization for that 2 months up to August 31st is just $469,958. And it becomes 8% of the total utilization. If you see against the 2 months of the allocation, our 2 months of allocation or year-to-date budget, that is $987,888, and we spent 48% of it. I know the pace of utilization is slow. Relatively, in July, by the opening of new financial year, we experienced slower disbursements due to new setup of new budget in the system, transfer of appropriations, and setting up for POs for the vendors, and most importantly, setting up the outstanding invoices from the previous year. So mostly July is the slower month. That is why we are experiencing slow disbursement over these 2 months. On this slide, we analyze the budget utilization, focusing on major account heads, and that are the major 5 that relates to the personal, travel, and administrative services. Overall, same. If we see the total, it becomes the 8% utilization against the total budget allocation, and 48% of the 2 years of the 2 months of the allocation. In personal services, we are 11%, travel 1% just, and 16% on the administrative services, 14% of the property equipment things, and general assistance. We haven't spent anything yet. Things are setting up, POs are in progress. Hopefully, from the next quarter, this disbursement will go on. Here, same thing. You can see the little, you can't see the little tiny graphs over here because of the same reason. We don't have enough data or disbursement rate up till now. If we see the detail analysis for the expense account heads, we can roll out to different sub-account heads and detail account heads, and it goes to the 8% total utilization. And if we look at the department-wise performance or utilization, these are the departments set up in the OCCY according to their functions. So we have details of each department against here, and the total again becomes to the 8%. Again, this is the chart. Blue one shows the allocation for the total year, and orange one shows the year-to-date 2 months of the budget, and the little green ones are the expenses up to date. And this is basically our spending trends. Again, it's not easy. It's early to make any comprehensive analysis. But the spending trends for the 2 months, we are on the increasing term, and up to over the last 2 months, total we have spent $469,958, and hopefully this will gear up in the next quarter. This is our cash balance report. And our cash balances, showing up our cash balances in different class fund accounts. And in total, we have $610,929.63 in our balance. And I think it is like, it maintains our cash flows smoothly for the next quarter. And all this, my presentation based on the reports of generated financial reports that are already included in the packet for your detailed perusal or examination. This is the rundown of the major financial activities. I want to update on that. We have submitted the 4 invoices for the quarter 3 and 4 of the financial year 23. So these has been accepted, and we are waiting for the reimbursement. And for the financial year 24, our homework is complete and ready to submit the invoices, but it's logical once we get the financial year 23 reimbursement, we will submit the invoices for the next year. second major thing going on the finance over here is the strategic plan and the budget submission for the next financial year 2026. We are working on it. Invoices, settlement and encumbrance for the last year, we worked on it. We submitted the request to OMS for unencumbered funds for any unutilized funds to move forward and for the budget revision process and carry forward funds to this year so that we are able to use it. So that are almost complete. For the CAMTA fund reconciliations, we did the reconciliation for the 2023. Whatever we received under the CAMTA fund was dispersed to the MD teams, and any of the unused fund after the end of the year, they returned that fund to us and we reconcile and give back to the EHS. So basically, this if I refer to the last cash balance report, there's only 22 cents showing up in this account class fund, and this is mostly because of when we calculate the administrative fee. This is basically the effect rounding up cents that makes the total calculation against the administrative fee. So overall, this class fund is zero for the financial year 2023. Overall, we are continuing oversight for the payment documentation with our OMS colleagues, doing the discussions, focusing on monthly reports, and to promote the transparency and accountability or financial operations to make it sure everything is adhere the systems or rules. And finally, routine invoicing and payments are on way and there are smooth, no major issue we are currently facing for the invoicing or payments of our OCCY. That is all for me. Thank you very much for your time. I am happy to answer any questions if you have, and invite discussion for a vote to approve the finance report.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have questions? No? Anybody like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner,
Yes.
Director Cartmell,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Hurd,
Yes.
Commissioner Laird,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes?
Judge Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate your work. Okay, I'm gonna move back to agenda item number 6, which is a presentation on the child sex abuse in Oklahoma, and I will turn the floor over to Dr. Jane Salotsky.
This is getting pulled up. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Jane Seletsky. I'm a psychologist and professor at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center on Child Abuse and Neglect, and I direct the National Center on the Sexual Behavior of Youth. And I really thank you for the opportunity to share information about our work in Oklahoma around child sexual abuse prevention. I could talk for 5 days about this topic, and I know you don't want me to do that. So how much time would be good for me to allocate?
How much time we anticipated?
15 to 20 minutes is what we generally
Perfect.
allocate.
That would be perfect. So I'm going to provide a overview, background in terms of child sexual abuse and prevention and the work that we are doing in Oklahoma in an effort to prevent child sexual abuse and have an opportunity for time for question. So when we look at child maltreatment in Oklahoma, we often look at DHS reports and being able to then look at the prevalence of concern that we have. If you look at child welfare data in Oklahoma across the country, primarily what you see is child neglect, which we talked about earlier today. And we have made valiant efforts in Oklahoma to address child neglect and physical abuse through a variety of programs. A lot of them are home visiting programs and are trying to make it more accessible to families through Parent Pro. If you look at child sexual abuse in particular, you see that it's by DHS records 4 to 5%. The concern is that really doesn't demonstrate the prevalence of child sexual abuse in Oklahoma. It is specifically those that there's a caregiver who's the suspected offender, and also there is great fear about reporting. So a lot of child sexual abuse does not come to the face of authority. So if we really look then at the research around child sexual abuse, and there's lots of reasons to believe this is also true in Oklahoma. If we look at national representative samples of youth, 10% of them have experienced some sexual harm to them in their lifetime. A bit more so for girls than boys, 12% girls, 8% boys. And if we look at some vulnerable populations, such as adolescents in congregate care, it raises significantly. So it's a quarter of those youth have a history of child sexual abuse. Historically, the old myths about this is it's a strange man. But we know, quite frankly, from the literature, stranger danger is really not representative of this. And in fact, it may not be an adult. So a third of cases, if you look at law enforcement data, juvenile justice data, it's another youth who has caused harm to children. And if you ask youth directly, there was a recent national survey of youth, 70% of sexually abusive experiences was caused by another youth. In our schools, we're seeing rise in awareness and potentially incidents of child sexual harm, and it has been impacted by COVID and access to electronics. It is a significant public health harm. If you think of ACEs, I'm sure all of you are very well versed on ACEs now. Child sexual abuse is one of those significant child adverse experiences and has been linked to depression, anxiety, suicidality, health conditions, early diseases, and so forth, eating disorders. And researchers suggest that the burden financially on the United States is significant. In 2015, it was estimated to be $9.3 billion. As I mentioned, children mostly know who has harmed them. 3/4 of it were family members or people in their circles of trust. Less than 10% are true strangers. Those who abuse kids include teachers, coaches, youth ministers, Boy Scout leaders. As I mentioned, electronics and COVID have complicated the situation in terms of access and harm to children. It has not increased stranger danger, though, that it continues to be people they know, but they're accessing them through electronics. And it's something that's very difficult for kids to be able to open up and share. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is the federal organization that has really done the most efforts in trying to eradicate child sexual abuse. They've provided guidance to youth-serving organizations that they're updating and should be out this fall. Historically, child sexual abuse prevention, and starting in the late 40s, has been focused on the potential victims to recognize, resist, and report. And I think we all can quickly realize the faults in that. We can't expect young children to be the ones that are protecting themselves. And so the CDC and others have really emphasized more of a policy-driven,
organizational driven and multifaceted approach for child sexual abuse prevention, including workforce strategies for screen selection and training, monitoring interactions, having safe places online and in persons, and having quality training. The CDC has just issued a grant request for further research on child sexual abuse prevention efforts, including youth with problematic sexual behaviors. And they are requiring that include community conditions, addressing digital space, and youth serving organizations. The good news there are evidence-based programs coming out. Darkness to Light and Enough Abuse are two examples of a multi-level approach in addressing child sexual abuse prevention. The other effort is directly going to people who could potentially harm other children. The Help Wanted and Responsible Behavior Against Children, as well as another program, Shifting Boundaries, are showing some really great preliminary evidence in preventing the child sexual abuse in the first place by getting to the people who could cause harm. There are efforts in terms of young children, letting them know that it's not okay to touch other kids' private parts. Typically what's educated about is it's not okay to harm other people by hitting them. But now there's an effort to really help kids understand. What we know in the research, the peak for problematic sexual behavior toward other kids is 12 to 14-year-olds. I like to think about that as hormones are going and frontal cortex is not yet in gear. It quickly reduces when they're 15 and 16, but there are effective measures to go in and prevent it in the first place through education and support. These aren't, quote, mini pedophiles. These are kids, have vulnerable situations that are making bad decisions that we could prevent it in the first place. There's also effective secondary prevention programs, as well as treatment for the impacted children. There are clearances, houses that provide that evidence in terms of those programs. So a number of individuals in Oklahoma wanted to really focus on child sexual abuse prevention, and the Department of Health through CDCAP funds in 2020 convened a work group that we have led since that time, composed of a number of different state agencies and private nonprofits really dedicated to preventing child sexual abuse and promoting healthy decision-making. So the first thing we wanted to do is find out what is going on in Oklahoma. And so we surveyed programs across the state. We have a directory of those programs for child sexual abuse prevention that we update about every other year. And actually any program that wants to be included, we can provide a link to add them to that directory. We invite those programs to be part of the work group so that their voice is there. The YMCA has a public campaign, No, See, and Respond. The Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Open Committee has online resources for caregivers and youth. The HOPE program has the Stewardess for Children, Darkness to Light. The CARE Center, Children's Advocacy Center, has the ROAR program for kindergartners for third graders, and Bethesda then hits the middle school with a Stop, Go, Tell program. In terms of those secondary prevention and tertiary prevention programs, there's evidence to support problematic sexual behavior, cognitive behavior therapy, which is actually developed at our Health Sciences Center, and I direct that program. We also have trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy for those impacted children. We have therapists across the state who are able to provide that care. I direct the National Center on the Sexual Behavior of Youth, and we have resources online for caregivers and professionals. And I've highlighted the part that is directly for caregivers. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Ray and Lived Experience Voices, because I think that is so critical. We have a parent partnership board and a youth partnership board that guides everything that we put on our website for caregivers and professionals. Department of Education is a key member of our work group, and they have a prevention department in which that they are growing their child sexual abuse prevention resources. And what we did early on is really focus on the schools, because that's the best way to really support children's efforts. There is federal Title IX requirements that they address all sexual harm in schools. And of course, in Oklahoma, we have Aaron's Law. So one of the other early activities of our work group is to develop a quick fact sheet about child sexual abuse prevention and how they're able to use resources to bring child sexual abuse prevention into the schools. Further, we wanted to get information from school personnel about what's going on in the schools. So we conducted surveys and focus groups with school personnel. The themes that we found, I will tell you, are similar across the nation. This is not isolated for Oklahoma. And one is school personnel are really feeling overwhelmed with everything that they need to provide. If you go down to this multifaceted challenges, a huge theme from the counselors and teachers is that they know their kids are in significant need and that there needs to be really personal connections for kids to feel safe enough to share, and they're feeling overwhelmed with the stress and demands that they have. Child sexual abuse prevention in the schools has focused a lot on reporting and identification and reporting to the hotline rather than true prevention. In part because of lack of knowledge and resources, and in part not understanding that multi-level approach. So we found inconsistent and fragmented approaches to prevention protocols and lots of advice on how to improve the training so that it could actually be used well by the counselors and the teachers. The counselors have been the people in the school systems to provide significant support in addressing child sexual abuse in the schools. And they also reported needing support. So our work group is developing a toolkit for schools that meets the needs in terms of not being a long 100-page document, but a brief, this is how you access support for a culture of safety, creating policies around child sexual abuse prevention, and how to support those that do disclose. That is now in the process of getting published and available to our schools. In terms of looking at what's available across Oklahoma and the results of these focus groups, I will say we are really in need of much more programming around child sexual abuse prevention, particularly in rural Oklahoma. Most of rural Oklahoma, all they really had access to was those programs like the Y, which is more public service announcement rather than true programming and support to make a difference within their agencies. So our next steps for our work group is to strategize how we can improve access to child sexual abuse prevention efforts and considering community and organizational based efforts. We do plan to apply for that CDC funding, and we're trying to focus what would be the best for Oklahoma. We're looking at efforts to enhance ways to develop youth making good decisions and preventing problematic sexual behavior, and specific tools for personnel, particularly schools and medical personnel. Again, I mentioned our directory is always evolving, so if there's any programs we don't have on our directory, we'd be happy to add them. And I have references in the PowerPoint for you if you like.
Do you have written copies of your directory?
Yes, I don't have them with me, but I can send them to be emailed to you. Absolutely. They are online on the Department of Health's website so that we can always update them with new ones. So yes, we can get you that link.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you for your presentation and for being here today. We appreciate it. Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 7, presentation of the OCCY budget request, and I will turn it over to our Assistant Director, Mark James.
I'm Mark James, Assistant Director of OCCY. You might see that this didn't quite fit necessarily the order that you might think, but we intentionally had Dr. Slofsky present because what she just presented is going to be connected to our budget request for this coming year. And so I'll do the PowerPoint as it comes up. We have a charge as with every state agency to submit our budget request by October 1st of each year. So that's coming up. We want to present our plan and proposal to you all for review, consideration, discussion, and approval. Our finance committee met earlier this week. We went over this with them and got feedback and input from that group. Thank you, Commissioner Hall and Director Front for being partners with that project. Before we talk about it, I want to kind of just give you an overview of where we have been. This is a snapshot of the past 3 years. The highlight there shows our state appropriations. And so you'll see in fiscal year 25, we have just over $3 million budgeted for our agency, which is an increase over the prior 2 years. If you look at the top row, and Mabugo already did share, our total budget is $5.9 million, which is great growth for us. And we've had that growth because of our partnerships with other agencies. These additional funds beyond our appropriations are our relationships with Human Services, Department of Health, Oklahoma Partnership for School Readiness, and other organizations who have shared funds of theirs with us for specific deliverables and activities. So just want to review, well, and last year you can see we did get our increase was 4.8%. We asked for just under $250,000 of requested new funds, and we got $139,000. So you'll see those at the bottom. We got one position for our juvenile competency program, and we got $50,000 for the ongoing database system for our agency. But before we dive too much into our budget requests, asking for money is never fun, and that's what we're doing. But we wanted to take a moment to look at, remind us why we're here, why our staff are in their positions, why you as commissioners are in our role. And so this is our mission. And I just want to read it to us. So every day, OCCY works to improve, protect, and collaborate with systems that care for Oklahoma's children, youth, and families. And ultimately, our charge as an agency is to pursue the vision that children, youth, and families are served and supported by caring and competent individuals that allow them to develop their full potential. So as you all know, we as an agency don't provide any direct care services like most of our partners do, like child welfare, juvenile affairs, and many others. But we work with them, hopefully enhance and make their services better. I always think about the old BASFF ad commercial from way back when, you may remember. The tagline is, we don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. And I think that's what OCCY's role is to be. We're supposed to help all these public and private agencies to be better. And so that's why we feel like we are here. It's our responsibility to help strengthen those services and resources and ensuring that the services that agencies and organizations are providing are quality, taking care of our kids in ways that are making them better and improving them. So with that, I am here to present a budget request, and I will share that it is a pretty large request, probably the largest request that OCCY has ever asked for in the history of the agency. But we believe that it is essential to address some of the issues that we are charged with doing as an agency, and potentially filling some of the gaps that the state of Oklahoma is currently not addressing. While we are asking for funding, I think of it as we're more of advocating for better, advocating for the future well-being of our kids and our families. With that, I will jump into the numbers. So this is just an overview. We were asking for $1,550,000 this coming year. We broke it down into 4 different areas. We know this is going to be a hard ask. It's going to be a challenge for us to go to the legislature and ask. But we believe that our children deserve greatness and goodness from everything that we do, the state of Oklahoma does, and the providers that we contract with offer. And you will see that this is a 52% increase of our current budget, which that percentage is a big number when you look at it, especially when you can compare that from agency to agency. Last year, our 4.8% increase was one of the higher increases for an agency. Most agencies were in the 1% or 0% even. So this is going to be a big ask for us. And so that's why we want your feedback and thoughts and ideas as we move forward to address these areas. So the 4 areas are our parent partnership program, staff salary adjustments. We want an investment in our Office of Juvenile System Oversight program and a pilot for a statewide continuum of services for child sexual abuse. Hence our relationship with Dr. Slosky. Go discuss each one of these individually briefly. And I didn't point out, obviously, this is our request to you all as commissioners. It is your role to bless this as an entire group or entire package or portions of it or not at all. So just want to remind you all that we're just presenting this to you all for your feedback and for guidance as we move forward and submit our budget, which is due in here in a few weeks. But our Parent Partnership Board was implemented about 4 years ago, and it's a relationship that we have with a few different entities. But CBCAP funds are received through the Department of Health, who give those to us. And we had a partnership for 5 years to establish our Parent Partnership Board. Well, that agreement expires next year. So we have a salaried position, a full-time position that is paid on that partnership. And so we believe that the work has brought significant value to what we already have accomplished, and we'll continue to do so. Title 10 directs the commission to establish a Parent Partnership Board. Title 10, Section 601.14, to collect a body of experienced individuals to share their input and ideas with us as an agency and as a commission. Isabel Rodriguez, for the past 4 years, has done that excellently. She's worked with James and many of our other parents that come meet with us each month, and many of whom have met with you all individually. So we believe that voice is critical for our work as an agency, and then also with the partners that we work with your agencies and the organizations that you're involved in. And we just feel that this is a critical role that a hole that we have filled several years ago, and it needs to continue to be filled. So we are asking for funding for that position to be fully covered by state appropriations. Salaries. This is not a very easy ask either. We've come to you before in prior years with individual salary requests for some positions, and we've been fortunate to make some adjustments over time. We've never gotten the appropriations that we've asked, but we've made some internal adjustments to try to address the needs that our employees need and our staff needs to carry our functions and duties. You're all probably aware the state government does not have a routine process for cost of living adjustments. From time to time, there's legislation proposed to increase state employee pay. Some years that happens and some years it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in many years. So it's left to the agencies to make decisions and adjustments on how to compensate their staff the way that it needs to occur. And like I said, we have made some adjustments to a few positions every couple of years recently, but we feel like there's a pretty good need to make a larger investment to our staff and to our folks. One of the things I do want to highlight is we've mentioned our budget has increased 16% over the past few years. But just remind you that those are partnerships. So those are arrangements that we have for the most part with other agencies with specific deliverables. And some of those deliverables do include funding for a position. But those partnerships end. For example, our Parent Partnership Board partnership is ending. So we can't use these increase of other funds for just salaries because those relationships will end. And therefore we can't, give salary now and then in a couple of years say, oh, well, we don't have the funding for it. So just wanted to highlight that while we have experienced increases in funding, we have not been utilized those for staff increases, or when they do go to staff issues, realizing that those relationships will end at some point. We're incredibly proud of the staff and the collection of folks that we have gathered as an agency. We've got folks that are passionate about making a difference, passionate about doing the work that they do and making a positive impact, despite the fact that much of our time is in very messy issues. We're continuously looking at child and abuse cases. We're reviewing and investigating the occurrences of child deaths across the state. We're working with partners to try to fill gaps in services within the state. And it's not easy. Just like we talked about earlier about the child care issue. Their decisions and solutions are not easy. So our folks are continuously trying to bring partners together to do that. And we have people who are committed to do that. And they do it day in and day out. But we feel like we need to make some changes to increase ultimately their salary so they can retain the current staff that we have and attract the folks that we need. Most of our positions require seasoned, experienced people to come in. We need people, for the most part, who are already familiar with state policies, who already understand how systems that we work in operate. We need to hire folks who are already within the program process of the state and understand how things work and operate. So in our efforts to adjust salaries, we've reached out to OMES, consulted with them. We've examined our positions and our roles and our responsibilities. And we feel like we have come up with a responsible and a reasonable request to make adjustments to our staff. And so the total ask for that would be $223,250. We believe that's an important and a critical investment to this agency and to the partners that we work with. The next ask is specifically for our Office of Juvenile System Oversight, $333,000. And this is for 3 new positions. In many ways, oversight lies at the heart of what our agency is about. You may recall, our agency was created in the early 1980s as a result of horrific instances of abuse that was happening to kids while in the care of the state. From that, our agency was created to be an independent oversight body to monitor, review, inspect, and be someone looking over all aspects of the children's services system to prevent that kind of thing from happening again. And we feel like our oversight, along with other entities, but particularly our oversight unit, that's their primary charge, is to be that watchdog, to be that body who's looking in there, asking questions to make a difference. We've been added responsibilities over the years as an agency, new statutory functions and responsibilities, and OJSO has been even added tasks throughout the years since our initial creation. But most of the time, those new asks, those responsibilities did not come with additional funding or staff positions. So we've been given tasks over the past few decades. And then alongside of that, our OJSO department the numbers of positions have decreased because we've had to make budgetary decisions over the years. Part of that has just been not replacing positions, and OJSO definitely has been impacted by that over the years. And I'll just take a few moments. We're going to talk about OJSO at a later meeting, a more detailed dive into their work and some needs that we have of that. But I just want to take this moment to talk about how OJSO's charge is great. Some of our resources have been taken from us. You recall 2 years ago, we went to the legislature to try to increase our oversight capacity. Because originally when we were created, OJSO could go to any facility unannounced, anytime, provide inspection, to ask questions, to see how the care and services are being provided to children. The legislation removed some of that many years ago. So now we can only go into the 6 operated state facilities unannounced and inspected or for an inspection. There are approximately now 106 privately operated or non-state operated facilities in the state. And we can only go into them when someone calls us, when someone says, hey, I got a concern or a problem with that. So only in response to a complaint are we able to go into those facilities. And you all may have noticed over the past few years, or months actually, we've had some pretty high profile situations. The Greer Center, Tulsa County Juvenile Family Justice Center. Some areas where we currently are not able to go to unless someone calls us and says, hey, come look at this issue. We feel we should have the capacity to go into those facilities to communicate, interact, interview kids, talk to situations to help strengthen those programs and services. And that's what we want to do. We want to strengthen these programs. We don't want them to go away. We need these services and we need them there. We feel like OJSO is critical in that process. We want to identify areas of improvement. We We want to strengthen these programs and their services so that they're excellent, because the kids that they serve and our kids deserve our services and programs to be excellent. And we believe asking for these two additional oversight positions, one of those being a director of for the oversight unit, will significantly enhance us to be there so that we can be successful at helping these programs be successful.
That's a quick question.
Yes.
Will this budget request also be accompanied by a separate legislative effort to change your ability to go into those centers?
We currently do not have a plan in place that we're ready to present to you all for that. We probably ought to reconsider. You may recall we did ask for that 2 years ago. It passed both chambers of the House and it got vetoed by the governor's office. So we believe that it is definitely needed, worthwhile, and it's critical. But we currently don't have a plan to present that legislative action.
Average, how many calls do you get? How many trips into facilities do we get to make a year?
Not very many. I do not know the exact number off the top of my head, but I would say probably 15 or so.
For the whole year?
For a year. Those are just someone actually calling in or informing, giving us a complaint. Most of all, they don't know that we're here. Probably we're not publicizing. We don't have the manpower, first of all, to I think one of these positions will enable us to be more integrated into the providers' arenas, so that we're communicating, we're engaging and interacting with these providers, so we're more attuned to what's going on and hearing things, so we can insert ourselves when we should be. Our final request is for this pilot for a statewide continuum of services for children for child sexual abuse. Here's an overview of that. But I believe our director is going to try to rise up from her illness and discuss.
I'm here. Can
you pull up the other PowerPoint? So I'm going to hand this over to Director Jacoby. She does have a PowerPoint that she wants to run through as well.
Thank you, guys. I'm so sorry. You do not want to see me. And I thought it was best to stay home. My public health nurse mother would have been disappointed if I would have exposed you to whatever it is I have. So I am going to run through this PowerPoint. I think Dr. Solofsky really set us up for this. Our idea is simply to support the efforts that are going on across the state right now, and to allow people, actually not people, but organizations, whether it's a youth organization, a child care center, a faith-based group, all these groups that want to learn more and do more around child sexual abuse, to be able to give them the funds so that they can shop for something that fits their needs in their community and go from there. So let's see. Oh, that's not mine. That's not mine.
I guess this is not hers.
Did Rob send one this morning?
We don't have it.
Oh.
Annette, I don't guess it's possible for you to share your screen.
Let me see.
We're sorry, we were just making some tweaks to the PowerPoint just as of this morning, and so we didn't.
Okay. So, do I have the capability to share?
Let me double check.
Because I don't see that I do.
It says all participants are allowed to.
Mark, while she's working on that, can I ask a different question?
Yes.
Is the board statutorily required to approve this budget request? I see we have it as a possible vote, but I'm curious if it's information or if there's a statutory obligation.
No, it doesn't explicitly say that, no. But we feel, Director Jacoby and I feel like we want to present that to you all, and you all have that opportunity to do that.
Are we planning to take a vote, or is this just for feedback?
No, we were planning to take a vote to adopt all or part or none of the requests.
Can I?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm Sandra Balzer. I'm the Assistant Attorney General who's the General Counsel for the board. And just to let you know that most agencies don't have express statutory authority for the board to approve the budget, but that is just something that has always been done for a long time. And basically for protection for the board that yes, the board as a whole voted on this budget request. And it didn't just come from a staff person or from who knows where.
I mean, I guess we have meeting minutes though that would show that we discussed it. I'm not trying to cause anything. I'm just thinking about it from the perspective of another state agency head having an official vote on.
Yeah.
On something that's not required, so just curious.
That's just my experience, or maybe other state agencies, you do have express statutory law that says the board has to approve the budget. But that's just the procedure that I follow with all of my clients.
So can you see my screen now?
No, but I believe Chair has finally got the PowerPoint on our side.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now I can't.
You want me to stop sharing, trying to share, or go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, if you share, then I'll just start talking. Okay, that's great. You can skip on by that title page.
Okay.
And I think Dr. Solevsky really gave us all this background information, so we'll skip over this page as well. And you can even skip over that. I just want to talk about these pieces. Yes, thank you. So the four areas, the way we really would like to dole out the money, and let's be clear, this would not be something that OCCY would do on its own. We don't have the capacity. So this would basically be funding that would go out to different entities and partners to do this work. We would need some money to do the administrative pieces, but other than that, I don't really see us as being the main players in this. We're just the stewards of the funding. That's the way I see it. We'd like to pilot this under our statute that allows us to pilot a topic, a subject matter, a program for up to 5 years. And then we can pass it on to a more appropriate agency, or we can get it codified and have it remain at OCCY. But for right now, we're interested in just getting this off the ground because, as Dr. Zalewski, I think, so well pointed out, we have a lot of patchwork programming going on around our state, but we don't have near enough. And we're not really even sure if all that's being done is the best that it could be. So we'd like to be able to make this a more coordinated and effective kind of system so that entities can get what they need for their community and implement it and feel good about it. If you want to go to the next slide, Chair. So what we'd like to see is a person at OCCY who could coordinate these efforts. And then what we would do is help provide any kind of support staff we could for the work group, because we think what they're doing is amazing. And we would love to be able to just help them keep organized and keep moving if that's what they need. And we would love that. We also can see a role to expand that work group to include groups like, I'm thinking, the Healthcare Authority and private insurance agencies, all these other entities that are involved in ways that maybe we don't necessarily think of originally when we think about child sexual abuse, but they're entities paying for exams, they're entities paying for forensic interviews, all kinds of things that are really important. And we'd like to see them on the work group as well. We also think it'd be important to have a website where everything could be found easily, whether you're a group out in the community or whether you're a provider, just a good place for everyone to know where to go. We'd like to create some kind of reporting system. So for those groups that do receive funding, that they would have a way to provide information back so we know that it was actually effective. I don't think any of us are very interested in acquiring money and then not making sure that it's effective and useful. We really want to make sure that that's something that we build into this system. Okay, next slide, Shara. The biggest chunk of money that we would like to see would be going to prevention efforts. And the way we're thinking about it at the moment is that this would be an RFP or an application process of some sort. so that the groups out in the communities would be the people who would be applying for these funds. We really want to be able to provide them with the funds so that they can get what they need. So whether it be a school or a tribe or a community group, or any kind of youth serving organization, we would love to be able to provide them the tools that they believe they need in their community to be successful. And we would provide them a list of what we can find, both locally grown and locally created and developed here in Oklahoma, as well as evidence-based programs across the state, and put those on our websites and try to do our best to come up with some kind of cost associated with that. But all in all, we're really interested in seeing these kinds of groups be able to shop for what they need and get it in their community and implement it with some kind of fidelity so that it is truly effective. Next slide. We also believe that there's a huge component that we need to really beef up, and that's our training efforts. We have multidisciplinary teams, either freestanding ones or those associated with child advocacy centers, that could benefit tremendously from some very specific training around this issue. I think there are programs, I know we certainly bring in trainers around this issue, but we could do more if we had more funding. I also think that Dr. Solovsky and her crew would really like to go out and talk about problematic sexual behavior, and that's really their forte. And I just can't, I really need to say this. We are so fortunate in the state of Oklahoma to have had not just leaders in our country, but leaders in the world. And I'm being very serious about this in this subject matter, Dr. Solovsky being one of them, and her predecessor, Barbara Bonner, being another. We really need to capitalize on the intellect and the knowledge that we have here, but and put it out in our community, make good use of it. And I don't think we've done that in Oklahoma, and it's a shame because we really are spreading our information and knowledge, and other people are utilizing it more than we are. I also want to emphasize on this last little bullet something that Carrie Little and Carrie Little's the director of the Child Advocacy Centers of Oklahoma. We heard a presentation by Victor Veith a while back, and I still can't get it out of my head because I thought it was so unbelievably thoughtful, about having specially trained chaplains to respond to child sexual abuse. And we know that we have children who are victims of religious leaders, and they need spiritual counseling, and they need someone to walk them through that. And they talked about how important that is, so that those kids don't lose what connection they may want to have with faith or God or whatever their spiritual needs are. And so I think that's something that we could use. I think all of us have seen too many headlines, and I just want to respond to these because I'm kind of tired of seeing it, and I just feel like we need to do something collectively about it. Okay, next slide. And last but not least, and this is really Dr. Solovsky's forte, and she will say, and I don't think she said it earlier, but there are huge pockets in the state of Oklahoma where we don't have services for kiddos who are either the victim of this type of abuse, or perhaps even have an issue with problematic sexual behavior. And we need to be able to have opportunities for these kids to receive services that so they don't have to drive to Oklahoma City, or in some cases, that's just not even feasible for them at all. So they just go without. And I think this would be a really great piece to bolster what they have been doing, and particularly in Western Oklahoma, where there's so few services. And I think Dr. Solovsky has talked about that in the past, about Western Oklahoma is really hurting, really hurting. And she'd like to see some additional training and thought put out there. So that's really the crux of that part of the proposal. And I know that it seems ridiculously large for an agency our size. Maybe it is kind of crazy in this time and to put this out, but I feel like we need to talk about it. So even if it doesn't go anywhere, and maybe we just keep doing this 2 or 3 years in a row, I think it's important to get this subject matter out there and to talk about how we deal with it, instead of just seeing it in the headlines and going, that's horrible. what can we do to prevent it? So this is what we're proposing.
All right, thank you, Director Jacoby. Mark, do you have more to add?
No, that's it, other than just, we have these 4 items that we're submitting to you all for request. We just need,
Questions do we have?
On the last line item for this pilot work, were other organizations discussed or considered to kind of serve as the backbone, if you will, for this, or I know we are by statute.
Yeah, I've talked to several state agencies who might have been interested in this or who were involved in it, and everyone is supportive of this request as is right at the moment.
Do we know at this point legislatively, do we have anybody in the legislature that is aware of this request or is favorable of it? Do we know how that's gonna land at this point?
We have no idea. We have not talked to any legislators about it at all.
Are there any other questions or comments?
So to Ellen's point earlier, for example, like OJA, my board has specific statutory authority where they have to approve the budget. And I just wonder, are we being asked as a commission to do something, one, that we're not required to do, and we don't have the authority to do? And if so, what impact does that have? I think I appreciate the work that Annette and the team has done to get us to this point, but particularly on the OMES raises and the adjustments. I mean, as Ellen's probably thinking through as I am, by voting to approve and support that, we're now going to go back to our agencies. They're going to say, well, we also have an OMES report, so you should do the same. And so it puts us as agency directors kind of in a weird spot that we may not actually have to put ourselves in. And on that and a couple of other things, I think as a commissioner, if we do need to make a vote, I just need more background information. And if it's not time sensitive, to one, establish, do we need to do it? And two, the information that I would need to vote to approve it or endorse it, I just think I would rather wait until the November meeting unless there's some reason that we have to vote today. But didn't mean to cut Ellen off.
I completely agree. You said it probably much more eloquently than I would have, but those are the exact things on my mind. So, I mean, I'll, defer to council, but I think if we feel like it needs to go to a vote to, give whatever support to the commission, I'll probably just abstain.
Well, I'll just speak to the deadline. So October 1st is our deadline for submitting our budget requests.
To the executive.
Correct.
And that can be modified after the date.
Absolutely, yes.
And to Jeffrey's point, please don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly supportive of the research and the proposals on this. These are very important topics. This is more just procedural and conflict of interest.
Okay, so
That's seriously considered. I get it.
statutorily, I mean, we have the authority to submit the budget without board approval. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, I can't answer for sure what your law says because I'm not intimately familiar with your huge body of law.
So scanned through the sections, I think it's entitled 10, and I couldn't find where it clarified whether it was the director's responsibility or the commission's responsibility. So I think it may be silent.
But I'm just saying from my experience, and I have clients that have much bigger budgets than this agency who don't have express statutory authority to approve a budget, who always have the board approve a budget. So I'm just telling you from my personal experience and practice rather than from an express statutory legal mandate.
Historically, Director Jacoby, have we historically as a board approved the budget request?
You have, but I think Director Cartmill is correct. I don't know that it expressly says that the commissioners have to approve the budget. That has been a practice that we've done forever. at least since I've been here, and I think longer than that. But I don't know that it gives an express, I'll go back and look real quickly, but I don't know that it gives an express responsibility to the commissioners in statute.
Is there any other comments, questions on this? Okay, I will move on to agenda item number 9, presentation and approval of the proposed status of the freestanding multidisciplinary teams for 2025, and I'll turn it over to Brittany Gassner.
So you're not gonna take a vote at all on a proposed budget?
I thought that was, I didn't hear a motion.
Okay. Confirming.
Good morning. My name is Brittany Gassner. I am the freestanding multidisciplinary team program manager here at OCCY. And last year, I provided you quite a few statistics on what the established multidisciplinary teams in our state were doing. We have 38 teams that have been that were established and approved last year by the commission. This year, I've had 3 new teams say, hey, we would like to become functioning teams. And I thought it might be a good idea to tell you what they have to go through to become functioning teams. So every freestanding team is required by statute to have a representative from the district attorney's office in their county, law enforcement, child protective service workers from OKDHS, medical personnel with child maltreatment experience and training, a licensed mental health professional, and then there must be a dedicated team coordinator that takes care of the running of the team. The purpose of the freestanding teams is to promote joint investigation between law enforcement and DHS, and coordination and collaboration to effectively respond to child maltreatment cases and reduce trauma to the child and the family. It also allows the team to review cases, to talk about issues, and to come in from different perspectives about things that a mental health provider may say a child needs this, that DHS might not necessarily think about that at the time of their investigation. So for us to be able to come in and ask questions and to share information that we know to reduce that trauma. Excuse me, allergies are ridiculous. So we do have 2 different types of teams in the state of Oklahoma. We have the freestanding multidisciplinary teams, and then we have the child advocacy center-based teams. The freestanding teams cannot be used by a child advocacy center for accreditation purposes, and they focus more on the collaboration of investigation and then the support for the family. Child advocacy centers, their teams are accredited through the National Children's Alliance. They are not covered in our freestanding MDT requirements. They have their own through the accreditation purposes. But interestingly enough, in Oklahoma, historically what's happened is when a district attorney decides they would like to try to get a child advocacy center in their district, they start with the freestanding team in that county, and that freestanding team is what then turns into the child advocacy center. So the responsibility for establishing the freestanding teams lie with both the district attorneys and OCCY. The district attorney needs to ensure that every county or contiguous county within their jurisdiction is served by a multidisciplinary team. OCCY supports the process by providing guidance and evaluation to ensure the teams are effective and properly established. There are several tasks that have to be done in order for an FSMDT to be established. And that timeline runs from January to July. So within that 7-month period of time, the first thing they have to do is contact OCCY and say, hey, we're interested in establishing a multidisciplinary team. What do we have to do? We actually have a document that we send out to them that provides them those guidelines about what documentation we're going to need, what types of meetings they're going to have, and so forth. Then we have to look at the county and see if they are able to have a freestanding team established there. If the county already has a child advocacy center, we can't have a freestanding team within that county. Then they have to contact the district attorney's office and get a letter of support from the elected DA. Sounds like a pretty simple job. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But once they have that support from the district attorney, then they get to assemble their core team, and that's those 5 disciplines, and then the coordinator. They start doing that. They have to hold their monthly meetings. They have to create the required documents, which include an investigative protocol, a fiscal responsibility protocol, how they're going to do joint investigations, an interagency agreement for everybody that's a member of the team, and have all of those signed and approved. We have an MDT basic training that by statute, new teams have to complete that training within the first 2 years of their establishment. We do have that curricula through OCCY. We go to the team rather than having to make them come to us. We will go to the team and do a 1-day or 2-day training based on what their needs are. And what we will do is we will invite all the teams within that area. So for example, I have a training scheduled for Elk City in December. We're inviting Comanche County, Jackson County, Greer County, all of those counties that are close to Beckham County, and saying, hey, if you have any new team members that haven't done this training yet, please go ahead and send them. We also have a couple of new teams in that area. We have Kiowa County and Tillman County who are asking for approval for this year, that they will need to do that training, and they're kind of going, okay, you're coming to Elk City in December, we'll just send everybody then. And then they have to designate a lead agency that will act as the, excuse me, they act as the fiscal agent for that team. So this is a more detailed breakdown of all that they have to do. So for those meetings, they have to have a minimum of 6 consecutive meetings before that July 1st deadline. The first 2 meetings are going to be developing their structure, identifying who's going to fill the required discipline roles, what the responsibilities are of each of them. Start developing those investigative protocols and the policies, and then review the statutes and the MDT minimum standards so they make sure that they're in compliance with all of that. The remaining 4 meetings are when they're going to actually start doing those case reviews and collecting the data for the annual review. We run the reviews from a July 1st to a June 30th fiscal year, as opposed to a calendar year. So by having those 6 meetings from January to June, they're able to provide at least some of that data for that annual review process. All of the documentation that is required, again, we talked about the interagency agreement, the investigative protocol, the forensic interview protocol, confidentiality statement. They have to provide sign-in sheets for their meetings where they've done case staffings. And then they have to show us, we send an annual survey in which they provide documentation of the statistical information that they've collected for the 6 months, and then their financial policies. Basic training, that's within that first 2 years, and they will provide us documentation that they have completed that training. And then the lead agency designation, which is going to be their fiduciary agents for the team. And then that that agency is going to be who we talk to when we're ready to do the contracting and provide the funding for Kanta. And then everything has to be completed by July 1st of the year that they're going to ask for approval. And then they will contact us and say, hey, we've done everything we're supposed to do. We'd like to be part of the annual review process this year. And that's what we do. We send them all of that information and have them do that. So are there any questions about the process? I know I talked very, very fast. So within your packets, you have a list of the 41 teams that are asking for approval this year. The first part is the 38 teams that were approved last year and in previous years. And then the second part are the 3 teams that are asking for approval this year.
So you're needing a motion from this body to approve those teams?
We need a motion to approve those teams in a vote.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner,
Yes.
Director Cartwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington,
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurt,
Yes.
Commissioner Laird,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes?
Judge Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Motion passes. Agenda item number 10, presentation and approval of child abuse training and coordination council members. I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So last month, we provided you a list of 11 people to be approved for the CAPTI Council. We've had some additional, we have 22 agencies that are required by statute to provide us with names of representatives to be approved by the commission. We've had an additional 3 names, one from Osteopath and one from the Oklahoma Bar Association. 2 from the Oklahoma Bar Association because they provided us with a representative and a designee. On the representative for the osteopaths, initially they had told me it was going to be Dr. Amanda Foster. I received a phone call yesterday afternoon at about 4:15 that said, strike that, it's going to be Dr. Mike Baxter from Tulsa. So as it stands, we have been told that we can go ahead and continue with that approval, even though the name is different than what's on the agenda. If you all are okay with doing that. And unfortunately, we requested that they provide us with resumes and they did not do that.
So does anybody have questions?
Sorry, procedural again though. Are we looking at council? Are we able to vote even though it's a different name than is on the agenda?
That was not the question I was asked. So I didn't research that question ahead of time, but from an open meetings standpoint and from procedural rules for a body like this to operate, even though there are really very few, as I understand it, is that someone could make a motion listing the names of the people to approve. And it doesn't have to be the same names that are on the agenda, but because the item is on the agenda for a vote, that the board can take a vote. And it doesn't have to vote on the names on the agenda. I wish I could answer the conflict of interest question, because that's a big one.
Could you say that name again?
Dr. Mike Baxter.
Maybe I feel more comfortable having resumes to review or. I'll move to approve Brittany Hunt Jassy, Laura Ruth Talbert, and Dr. Mike Baxter for the Child Abuse Training and Coordination Council.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner,
Yes.
Director Cartwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington, District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Kirk,
Yes.
Commissioner Laird,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherman,
Yes.
Judge Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Passes. We'll move on to item number 11. I'll just let everybody know we are going to be tabling item 13 and 14, and there will be no other voting items for the rest of the meeting. So we'll move on to item 11, legislative report, and I'll turn it over to Marcia Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to say you have the list of the interim studies that I'm tracking in your packet. Only one of those has met. They're gearing up. They're going to start in earnest next week. And I wanted to remind you that if there is one or more that you're interested in, you can either watch the study live on the House or Senate website. If you can't see it live, both websites archive the meetings, and they also they also post the presentation materials on the website, so that can be accessed at any time after the meeting. I was gonna go into some of the materials, but we're so far behind. I did wanna say though, there is an interim study on child sexual abuse in schools, preventing that. So that's a very timely topic. That's all I've got.
Thank you so much. Questions? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 12, presentation of the Oklahoma Child Death Review Board program. And I will turn it over to Joseph McGrath.
I wish the ladies who are here talking about childcare were still here for me to thank them, because the childcare shortage is real and it's often fatal. But I'm just going to give you an update on where we stand as a program. Going to the next one. A little history of how we were funded or how we were founded, but we have made some big changes over the last year. Last summer, we decided with some staff changes and some changes in the priorities after some of us have been to conferences and talked to people in other similar boards, or excuse me, we realized that we weren't really putting out reliable numbers. The difference is the numbers between year of review and year of death. Up until now, it's always been year of review. And when you look at one annual report and it says so many kids so many Hispanic kids committed suicide, and then the next year that number is higher, it makes it seem like the number of kids out there who did that rose, when it didn't, because a year of review could contain deaths from a number of years, and they did. And so we weren't able to track trends or spikes or dips or anything like that. So we decided to start focusing on year of death. This required us to sort of set aside for a while some of the backlog. We will get to that. We're working on it with we've had a staff increase. But we're now focusing on the most recent year possible, which for right now is 2022. There's a lag. There's always going to be like a 2-year lag, because just getting the documents that we need takes time. Sometimes they're not available. The medical examiner's office doesn't sometimes finish up their work for 6 to 9 months afterwards. So 2022 is the year we're working on now, and I'm happy to report that we will be able to turn out all of the numbers on 2022 and be able to break them all down statistically, well, among all the data points and everything that we do for the national system, which I'll get to later. This looks like we have 6 teams. We actually only have 5, because the Northwestern team, with such a sparse population and so few deaths, it's not worth it for us to travel up to, Guyman or something for deaths. So they are subsumed within the central team, which meets here in Oklahoma City. Southwestern team meets in Lawton. Southeastern team meets in Shawnee. Eastern team and Tulsa team both meet in Tulsa. So obviously Tulsa and the Metro team are going to have the most cases. Metro team meets, or Central team meets monthly. Tulsa is bi-monthly, and the others meet quarterly. here's a little rundown of our process. First thing we do is gather documents, all the documents having to do with a particular child's death. That's the death certificate, the medical examiner's report, if child welfare was involved. Medical records, if they go to the hospital, that this can range from like the PCP, the personal physician, you know, well child checks. You know, those are sometimes slim, to a huge dictionary of medical records from St. Francis or something like that, as well as run sheets from EMS. EMSA is very, very cooperative with us. The private emergency systems, not so much. We put all that together, we highlight the salient points, we write a narrative, kind of collapsing all that into like a digestible story, and we upload it to a cloud source, which will be changing. We use the box right now, but OCCY here is changing. Remind me, Mark, what's the new system?
We're utilizing SharePoint.
SharePoint. We're going to be changing that for, I think, security reasons. Individual members on the boards are assigned cases. They look them over. They have to answer a few questions that are subjective. We want the experts to answer. The vast majority of the questions we have to answer on this long form, which I'll get to later, is there's about 900 items potentially. It changes depending on the kind of death and how questions are answered, but there's a handful of subjective ones. Like, was this preventable? Was it the result of child abuse or neglect? Those sorts of things we have the experts answer. And there are a few rules about how we assign them. If DHS is involved in the case, we don't give them to prevent conflict of interest and stuff like that. Then we complete the National Fatality Review Case reporting system, which is that long questionnaire I mentioned earlier. And when I say data entry, I don't want you to think of some entry-level kind of thing where you're just taking forms that have been filled out and just entering it on the computer. It's very different, much more involved job. Chrissy Watley is our data entry person now, and it can involve, just the other day she was talking about she finally got the answer to one of the questions because she found it on page 200 and something of a 700-page document from St. Francis Hospital. After that, we collect all the data and report it. There's a step missing here. I'm standing in for Liz Cup, who unfortunately wasn't able to miss this meeting because the poor thing is on her way to Europe right now. So we do an annual report that does a statistical breakdown of all these different, through demographics and various other factors for any child death. And we put out an annual report for that. And with the annual report come annual recommendations. For the first time ever, we're going to be able to do hard data-based annual recommendations. So far, they've been sort of general. We need more awareness about certain things, but we're going to be able to be a lot more specific this year. And our next step is hopefully we're getting some new staff and we're getting some interns. We're going to be able to do more outreach and more cooperation with other programs within OCC, like PNC. We are working on motels, for instance, that's my personal bet. Well, they're very dangerous places for kids, often fatal. And sometimes kids being left in motels as a result of inadequate childcare. And so we're working on providing kits and information, educational stuff for hotels and motels, because there's so many ways kids can get hurt. This is a little overwhelming at first. I'm just going to run through it real quick. The first column is the number of kids per year that die. We do not review all child deaths. We don't review things, that were children that died from congenital defects or just diseases of natural deaths, unless there's some suspicion that natural death occurred as a result of medical malpractice or medical neglect or something like that. The biggest case is the little asterisk next to MOD's manner of death. If the manner of death is natural, but there's still something questionable about it, we do review those. The vast majority of those cases are usually mismanaged diabetes. Either the parents are not able to or don't get the kids the training and education they need to handle their own if they're teenagers. And sometimes we have parents who think, she's 10, she can handle this ourselves and stuff, like letting kids manage their own diabetes. That's the biggest portion of those. Here are the number of cases we have open. There's so many for 2021 because we decided to forego doing those and focus on 2022 because that's the most recent one. Eventually, we will get that backlog cleared out and we'll be able to do retroactively do a report on that year with hard numbers for that whole year. And these older cases are ones that were hard files that we didn't have electronically that, we had hired a third party or an outside firm to scan all of our hard files. And so we're gonna have to go back in and audit those. So the ones with asterisks, we've yet to verify, but we'll find those and get those out. But our priority lately has been getting all of 2022's deaths reviewed and closed. As a quick look at how our staffing has been, it makes sense that there would have been a backlog 3-4 years ago because the staffing was we had one person with a little bit of temp help. I came on in 2021 and 2022. So for me, it was just it's me and Ellie over there, can you wave Ellie, and Liz Kopp, the program director. And we just added Christina Watley, who does the data entry. And we're going to be announcing another position soon. As you can see, between these two, staffing and productivity kind of track. Proud to say we have closed 547 cases so far this year, which is quite a bit more than previously. We got a grant because of this increase in productivity and the amount of the increased amount of information that we are sending to the national system. The national system is they're the source for the CDC and various other academic institutions that collect this kind of information. And they noticed that we were putting out a lot more information and that our data was cleaner and more consistent. And so they offered us a grant to take closer looks at SUID, sudden unexplained infant death, and STY. I should clarify the terms here. SIDS was the term that was used for ever sudden infant death syndrome. That term hasn't gone away, but it is much more specific now. It used to just kind of be a blanket term for mysterious children, kids just dying without anybody really knowing why. Now, that term is only used for children that die in the absence of any unsafe sleep factors. And to quote Dr. Eric Pfeiffer, our chief medical examiner, SIDS cases, bona fide SIDS cases are as rare as unicorns. There is nearly always some other risk factor that's attendant to this death. And so we're going to do they're funding us with some data training and doing a much more granular look at the circumstances around these types of deaths. This is just a little profile of the Center for Fatality Review and Prevention. They're the ones that we send all this data to, and they turn around and can give us the raw reports that we manipulate. And I don't mean manipulate in a bad way, but filter and so forth like you do with data for our reports. Okay, this is looking forward for what we're going to do. The SUID and STY process is we're going to get some interns who are going to help us with the focus on the granular. That you wouldn't believe how precise the questions are on the SUID cases. And that usually requires having to take careful looks at photographs of the sleep scene and so forth. And we're going to get some help with those. And after we've settled into a schedule where we're able to put out year by year reports and finish and close entire year's worth of data or entire year's worth of cases, we're going to go back to doing, taking care of that backlog and publishing after the fact, kind of a retroactive report. We also hope to get more tribal representation. We recently picked up 2 more tribal representatives for our teams, but that's something that's been lacking for the past several years. And it's important too, because like the tribes are not bound. We can send out subpoenas to any police department or sheriff's office that doesn't want to give us records. We can't do that with the tribes. They're not bound by the statute that requires that they give us these records. So getting more tribal involvement would be really helpful. And the OUE team is helping us, is going to be helping us publish those reports and manipulate the data so that we can present year by year trends and so forth once we have more than 1 year of complete data. This is a full-time position I've mentioned before. They're going to be more concerned with outreach and education. So far, we've kind of specialized. Ellie's specialty is she's going to be working on she has a JD, so she's going to be working on legislative recommendations and so forth, and thinking more about like public policy. Mine is more academic, looking at correlations and stuff, doing more focused reports on interesting correlations and discrepancies in the data. And this person is going to be doing more outreach for education and so forth. And we are going to reboot the Think, Prevent, Live campaign. It was an educational campaign that did things like, one thing I'm a fan of is these little medallions that you hang on a lanyard that you hang on if you're at a pool party and you're the adult in charge of looking at the kids in the pool, because I am so sick and tired of reading these reports and seeing these grotesque pictures when there's a ton of adults around and some kid ends up at the bottom of a pool. And people think that drowning's noisy, that people go, help, help. No, they slip underwater and go, and that's it. And it seems like sometimes the more adults there are around, the more likely a kid is to die. And so having someone who is designated as the person, anyway, that's just one. We have tons of other things. Just I'm a former water safety instructor in lifeguard that just those drownings just piss me off. But we have other ones, but I think we're running late, so I'll just leave it at that. This is our staff right now until we get those 2 interns. Questions?
So the Northwest area, are those cases being reviewed by a different team?
Oh, yeah, they were subsumed by Central. The state team reviews those. Yeah, all of those are reviewed by the state team.
Okay, gotcha.
Any other questions about the program in general or about this PowerPoint?
Thank you.
All right, thank you
so much for your presentation. Okay, next on the agenda, we will move on to agenda item number 16, director's report, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark.
I'm filling in for Annette on this, and I'm just going to proudly announce our 2 newest employees with the commission. I think since we've met last, we have hired Madison Wingate with our Office of Planning and Coordination. She is a community planner and for our preschool development grant. We're very excited to have her. She's an educator for 11 years, so she brings a lot of experience, and we're very happy to have her. And she's sitting here on this side of the room. I also would like to introduce Lucia Amasquita. She just joined us this week. She's made it for a full week. We're excited about that. She's with the Office of Juvenile System Oversight. She's going to become an oversight specialist, reviewing the many cases of complaints that we receive. She came to us from child welfare. She most recently was a supervisor there. She's been with the department for 10 years. So her experience and knowledge and understanding of policy and practices is going to be extremely valuable to us. So we're happy to have both of these new staff join us.
Thank you so much, Mark, and welcome new team members. Okay, we will move on to any announcements. Do we have any announcements at this time? Hearing no announcements, lunchtime I think is close. Chairperson comments. I just want to say a few things real quick. So Commissioner Laird will be stepping down from the commission, and today is actually her last meeting. And I just wanted to extend a formal thank you and gratitude for the service that you have given to OCCY and the state and the children that we serve. You served as our president and served on many committees and done so with diligence. So we just really appreciate and applaud your efforts in that space. I would also like to just acknowledge that Director Deb Shropshire, obviously we know she's stepping down from DHS, and so will no longer be on this commission. And I just really have appreciated working with her and her service to our state on this board, as well as to the Department of Human Services. So we will miss both of you all. And Director Cartmell left, but I was going to congratulate him on his movement to DHS. Last, I know everybody's ready to go to lunch. I also wanted to say, I know we rushed off of the budget topic as there was no motion made, but I just want to commend Mark, you and your staff, and Annette, the work that you did to put that budget together. I know that took a lot of work, and I really appreciate the presentation you gave. And all of us, the mission of this commission is very important to us, and so I appreciate and applaud your efforts in the budget space. Okay, I don't think I have anything else. I will go ahead and call the meeting adjourned at 12:16.